So today we are going to talk about how to calculate your ascendant or your rising sign. I'm going to take my circles and I will draw a birth chart template. So your ascendant is the point on the ecliptic at which it intersects the eastern horizon at a particular time, such as the time of your birth. The midheaven, or medium celi, is where your 10th house is located, and it forms the cusp of your house career. It's directly overhead at the time of your birth. This can also tell you a lot about important occurrences in your life having to do with career and success. The imum celi, which is the bottom of the sky, is the 4th house. It has to do with your genetics, ancestry, and what your family and home life is like. The descendant is the opposite of your ascendant. It is your 7th house. It has to do with interpersonal affairs. It's everything which we are not, but may gravitate to in others. It has to do with the shadow self and everything from which we dissociate. In the southern hemisphere, the midheaven will be the 4th house, and the imum celi will be the 10th house. And as you can see, I've drawn a little sun there with some arrows to kind of remind you that the direction that the sun would be taking during the course of the day, and whether your ascendant or your sun sign will have more impact on your life can depend on where the sun was at the time of your birth. If it was very close to the ascendant, then the ascendant and sun sign might be equally weighted. But if the sun was closer to the imum celi at the time of your birth, then it may have less impact on your life than your ascendant. Now I'm drawing these paired astrological symbols because on average it takes 2 hours for each of the astrological constellations to pass through the 1st house and determine your rising sign. The two paired symbols take about an equal amount of time to travel through that 1st house. So they're paired by Pisces and Aries, Aquarius and Taurus, Capricorn and Gemini, Cancer and Sagittarius, Leo and Scorpio, and finally Virgo and Libra. We're going to look at how long it actually takes for these constellations to pass through the 1st house. We're going to look at Paris, France, which will be very comparable to all of you who live in the northern hemisphere, like the United States or Europe. We're going to look at St. Petersburg, Russia, which is closer to the Arctic Circle. And we will look at Concepcion in Chile, which is in the southern hemisphere. And you can see that that first pair, it takes about 1 hour to pass through the 1st house. And can take as long as 2 hours and 45 minutes. However, when you get closer to the Arctic Circle, that first pair can take as little as 35 minutes to pass through the first house. But then, the further down that list we get, the longer it's going to take for those constellations to pass through that first house, which is right there on the horizon at the time of birth. And then down in the southern hemisphere, you can see that the time spread is actually reversed. And so the next thing that I'm going to do today is to draw a graph, a color-coded graph for you to illustrate how this looks for those of you who are more pictorial learners like myself. Seeing it in graphed form really helped me understand it better. And I'm writing my time increments down there on the x-axis. And I will be putting my astrological correspondences over on the y-axis. And I went all the way up to 4 hours, but I don't think that it ever takes any of the signs quite that long. Alright, so starting out with Paris, I'm going to use the purple highlighter. And I'm just going to graph out those different times in relation to how long it takes the constellations to traverse that area right over the horizon. Next I have pink for St. Petersburg in Russia. And finally, I'm actually going to use blue. The green doesn't show up, unfortunately. And you'll see that the slope of the line for the times in Concepcion is reversed from the northern hemisphere. And there is actually an equation that you can use in order to determine this to great accuracy. If you want to get the celestial longitude of your ascendant, I'll be writing down the equation on the page, and then I've also put an insert on the video. This equation is taken from John Meeus's 1991 book, Astronomical Algorithms, and I will be linking a PDF of that in the description. And admittedly, a lot of the math behind this goes way over my head. But fortunately for yourself and myself, there's another way to calculate by hand. And I'll show you that momentarily. But in this particular equation, you can see that theta L represents the sidereal time in degrees. That lowercase sigma, it looks like an E, represents your axial tilt. And that is the angle between the equator and the ecliptic. So even though it's a lowercase sigma, I think of it as being an E. And then that phi, that one's a phi, represents the observer's terrestrial latitude. Now, if you don't have a calculator handy, you can actually still use basic math. And if you have a book like Parker's Astrology here, that has the tables in the back to reference, all it takes is a little addition and subtraction. This method is not as exact. So while it is fun and educational to do so, and it did help me understand my rising sign a lot better, there are so many modern conveniences now available on the internet that will give you such an exact result. And especially if you're on a cusp, it really makes a huge difference. Basically, you have to convert your local birth time to the Greenwich Mean Time, sidereal time. And then you'll reference a chart in the back of the book and convert it back to your local data. And I will put a website in the description below where you can calculate just your rising sign separately from the rest of your birth chart. So now I'm writing down my birth date at the top of the page, as well as the place where I was born. And I also have the latitude and longitudinal coordinates for the city where I was born. And if your birthday, like mine, falls within the daylight saving period, you have to deduct 1 hour. And that's just deducted, and you won't be adding it back in later. And if you're in the southern hemisphere, it'll be a little more complicated, but basically you need to figure out what time it was in Greenwich, England at the time of your birth, and then figure out what calculations you'll need to do to convert that back. Atlanta is west of Greenwich by about 5 hours and 38 minutes. So my actual birth time was 8:42 in the morning. I'm going to subtract an hour, that makes it 7:42. And then I have to add that 5 hours and 38 minutes to see what time it was in Greenwich Mean Time when I was actually born. And you have to convert things into actual times, so don't forget to subtract 60 and add 1. So that puts my birth time at about 1:20 in the afternoon in Greenwich, England. And now we can reference the chart in the back of the book for the sidereal times. And that's the months across the top in Roman numerals and the days down the sides. At the bottom of each page is a table which has birth years in it. In 4 columns, there are 4 tables. So you find which table your birth year corresponds to. And then also on that table at the bottom of the page is going to be a factor to correct the time, and you'll have to add that to the sidereal time from the chart. And so this sidereal time is for if you were born at midnight in Greenwich, England. So next I'm going to have to add my actual birth time back into that number. And that far left column is the hours. I think this method has the potential to be very accurate. The tables in the back of the book, however, while they do progress numerically, there are kind of gaps in between, so you would have to do like the micro calculations within the tables of the ascendant to really pinpoint exactly. And there are a lot of time corrections that you have to do because time does expand. And I think the factor is like by 4 seconds a year or something like that. So that chart does have some of the longitudinal time corrections, and it has to do also with how far away time-wise your place of birth is from Greenwich. Which for Atlanta, Georgia would be about 5 hours and 38 minutes. There's another factor mentioned at the top right corner of this page, which I didn't fully understand. It has to do with time differences as well, and they said if the time difference is 3 to 9 hours, you add 1 second. If it is 9 to 15 hours, you add 2 seconds, and on like that. So now I have to subtract back out again that 5 hours and 38 minutes to get back to the actual sidereal time that would be local to me at my time of birth. And if the number that you get is higher than 24, subtract 24 hours from it in order to correct. So you can look it up on the Ascendant tables. So now you go into the back, and the latitude coordinates are at the top of the table, and then the sidereal times go down the side. And like I said, there's kind of gaps. So you have to approximate and see what your data falls, like the range that it falls into, rather than finding an exact match. And then on this table are the coordinates, the celestial coordinates for where your ascendant would be at the time of your birth, along with the sign. And for me, that would be about 20 degrees. And my ascendant is Virgo. Now, to further figure out from there your midheaven, your Imam Seelai, and your descendant, you can go back to your birth chart template. Start in the first house, that'll be your ascendant, and draw the astrological symbols in order all the way around, and then you will know your house placements. This is kind of approximate because, as I mentioned before, they're not at exact intervals. So you could end up with some very long houses and then some very short houses. And again, your Imam Seelai is your 4th house, so genetics, ancestry, family and home life. Your descendant is your 7th house. Could be your shadow self. That could be things that other people recognize in you that you don't recognize in yourself. It could be things that you seek out in others. And then the midheaven being your 10th house, which is career, your successes, anything like that. And then for reference, because I already know them, I have put my sun and moon placements on this particular chart. And I would like to do more of these videos and go through calculating all of the different placements, just to give you a better idea of where that data actually comes from and what it actually means. I also wanted to remind you that I'm coming up on my 500 subscriber mark, and I would like very much to give away one free tarot reading or crystal scrying. It'll be your choice if you win. If you'd like to enter, please, down in the comments section, write your email address, and then if you would like, give me a short get to know you, like where you found my channel, what you like the best about it, and then when I hit 500 subscribers, I will choose one email address and I'll contact that person. If you enjoyed this video, please do like, share, subscribe. You can comment without entering the contest too. If you feel like I got something wrong or I didn't quite cover something enough, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for enjoying my videos and always leaving me some great feedback. I really appreciate all the support, and I hope that all of you have a great day. I'll see you again.